Welcome to On the Stand with Ashish Arun. Today, we have the privilege of speaking with Dr. Robert B. Handfield, a leading authority in supply chain management. Dr. Handfield is the Bank of America University Distinguished Professor at North Carolina State University, where he also serves as the Executive Director of the Supply Chain Resource Cooperative. With decades of research, countless publications, and practical experience in global sourcing, supply chain risk, and operations management, Dr. Handfield's insights have shaped both academia and industry. Today, we'll explore his journey as an expert witness, his experience working on complex cases, and the vital skills needed to succeed in this challenging field. Dr. Handfield, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here, Ashish. Thank you for inviting me today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. So you've had an illustrious academic and professional career in supply chain management. So can you share with us what initially drew you to this field and then led you to acting as an expert witness?
Yeah, so as an undergraduate, I studied statistics and mathematics, and so I've always sort of drawn to quantitative and applications of quantitative methods to business problems. I also ran my own business as a young man, so I was interested also in just applying mathematics to business problems. And I then went to graduate school and immediately was drawn to a lot of the field of operations research. But then as I delved into it, I really became much more interested in what was going on in the field, and especially in the field of purchasing and acquisition, in managing suppliers. And that was sort of a budding field at the time, and I sort of really just fell into it. And it was very timely because it proved to be a very big topic, and especially after COVID became a critical element. And I just found that I was, being contacted by more and more people as an expert in supply chain management. And I believe that's because I have a strong academic background as well. I publish a lot. I publish books, peer-reviewed journal articles, but I also spend a lot of time working with industry. I run a center called the Supply Chain Resource Cooperative at North Carolina State, where we work on projects with companies using MBA and undergraduate students. So I became very much exposed to a lot of the problems and challenges that businesses in multiple industries were facing: oil and gas, electronics, healthcare, pharmaceuticals, and really became exposed to those kinds of challenges that those industries were facing with respect to their supply chain.
So how did the first case as an expert witness come through? And especially at that time, did you know what an expert witness is supposed to do and what this kind of work entails?
No, not at all. I was doing work for a very large pharmaceutical company here in North Carolina, and I was referred to the council by the supply chain managers and saying, hey, this guy knows a lot about our company. He knows a lot about supply chains. He would be a really good expert witness. And so I was brought in, and I had no idea how to write a expert witness report or what was involved. And so I ended up doing that work, which ultimately was settled. So I never had to testify or anything like that. But then as time went on, I began to be contacted by more and more people. I think primarily because I do a lot of webinars, I do a lot of discussions, I publish a lot of articles, and people were reaching out to me. And over time, I became more exposed to what's involved in terms of writing reports, taking depositions, and testifying in court. And I've done that now multiple times, so I've become sort of proficient at it and sort of understand how the game is played, so to speak.
And what was the first experience of testifying like? Because a lot of professionals, they want to stay away from doing expert witness work, even though they are very well credentialed and very well experienced and knowledgeable, because they don't want, they're a little scared of the whole litigation system and the adversarial nature of the system. So, what was your experience like?
Well, the first time I was scared. I mean, I was
Mm-hmm.
very much afraid of what to expect, and especially since it was a jury trial, and so I was
Mm-hmm.
going to be facing a jury, and also, I know the opposing counsel was a crime litigator, so he was very aggressive and very confrontational, if you will. But
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I think that helped me, being an educator, is you become very good at explaining things, complex topics, to a group of people who know nothing about that subject. And so I spent most of the time facing the jury, looking at the jury, and explaining to them what a supply chain is, how it operates, how do those principles apply to this case? What are the issues with inventory, with logistics, with purchasing, with global supply chains that increasingly more and more products are sourced from Asia? So explaining these things in a direct, forthright manner shed a lot of light on the case that I think helped the jury reach their decision in this case.
So, is there a particular case which was more memorable than others? Could you shed some light on your experience, maybe the facts and the issues that were involved in the case, and how it went for you?
Sure. So I'll share with you some details regarding a recent case that I testified in court on, and it was a case. The case was lent via the GXO. GXO was a big third-party logistics company that had managed a major distribution center for Lindt. And Lindt, if you don't know, you probably would recognize them. They're a manufacturer and distributor of high-value chocolates. So they produce chocolates and so forth. And their peak season occurs from October through March. So it's Halloween, Thanksgiving, December,
Mm-hmm.
Valentine's Day, and Easter. Well, it was specifically during this time that XPO was managing their new distribution center, and they used a software system, what's called a warehouse management system, that didn't work, that failed.
Oh.
And so that was an absolute worst time for Lindt to not be able to ship products to customers during their peak sales seasons. And so there was a breach of contract issue brought up against GXO, and a statement that they had withheld facts from Lindt regarding the non-performance of this warehouse management system.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I was able to explain to the jury in simple terms how this warehouse management system had failed, that it was not the fault of Lindt. In fact, a manufacturer like Lindt relies completely, 100%, on a third-party logistics provider like XPO to sell their
Mm-hmm.
product. If that product doesn't go out, they don't get paid. If they don't get paid, they don't have revenue. And so these are very simple concepts that needed to be essentially boiled down and explained to the jury. And I believe that testimony was essential in
Mm-hmm.
helping Lindt gain a $51 million jury award as a result of that case.
Have these cases then led to like when people have read about these cases and have other attorneys then come to you seeking your guidance because of the publicity you get from these cases, or the legal journals that cover these cases, and they would recognize you as the expert involved? Like, have you seen that happening?
I've seen a few people come to me. Generally, I will work through a third party company that represents me, that
Mm-hmm.
will talk to legal teams based on new cases that are coming forward, and they'll present me as a potential witness. They'll show them my legal witness experience, the
Mm-hmm.
number of depositions I've taken, the number of trials I've testified at. Another important point is something called a Daubert ruling. A Daubert ruling involves whether that expert witness is ruled out as an expert. And very often, opposing attorneys will try to advocate that This person is not an expert. Well,
Yeah.
I've never had a Daubert ruling against me, so that is in my favor as well, if you haven't been ruled out as an expert on any case.
Yeah. And they must have filed those challenges, like the Daubert challenges, and the court would have then denied them, saying that no, you are qualified as an expert, and we are not going to exclude the testimony. So has that happened?
Uh,
Have the motions been
oh
filed?
yeah, oh yeah. The motions have been filed. The Daubert motions have been filed on multiple occasions, and in many cases they try to say, well, he's not an expert in this particular industry and for this particular case. It's kind of like saying, well, you're an expert on insects, but you're not an expert on butterflies. Therefore, you don't qualify. Well, supply chains, I argue, are very, very similar. The concepts and the principles of supply chain management are set in stone. I mean, they've been around for many, many years, since the early times of the Chinese Silk Road. And the principles of inventory management, transportation, warehousing, procurement. These are business functions that have been around since the origins of man. So I think that it's hard to argue that you're not an expert when I've been studying these supply chains for 35 years, and I've worked in direct consulting expertise and consulting projects and executive education. And I'm really a non-traditional academic because I spend a lot of time with industry. I spend a lot of time learning from people in the field about what they're doing, the problems they're facing, and the challenges, and what technology they're using. And so for me, I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly learning more and more about this field. And it's a field that never stays static. It's always changing. There's always new developments going on.
So I'm going to double click a little on the whole Daubert challenge aspect, because it also aligns with my other company, the Expert Witness Profiler, where we actually help attorneys vet experts and do research on opposing experts. So a lot of times, like experts don't even come to know when a Daubert challenge is filed against their testimony. And then they would probably learn after a ruling has been made, or they would never get to know about it. And like maybe months later or years later, they would suddenly come to know from somewhere, like from a court order or something, that they got excluded. So have you seen experts, like maybe the opposing expert on your cases, or other experts in this field of supply chain management, getting stricken by a Daubert ruling?
I've seen one expert being stricken as a Daubert ruling, and it was in this case, he was serving as a consultant to the company at the time of the case events that occurred, and so he was stricken because of a conflict of interest. But I think the differentiating feature for an expert is that you are objective, so there are no conflicts. That you are testifying based on basically the fundamental facts of the case. It doesn't have to be. It shouldn't be biased, and it is an opinion, but the expert can give an exposition of principles relevant to the case. So in my case, it very often involves stating, not just the facts of the case, but what are standard industry practices. What is the state of the art? What are the elements that are considered normal business practice in supply chains? And was this case normal or irregular in terms of the events that occurred and the actions of either party? So I think that's important, to be able to establish that yes, these are normal conditions. One of the benefits that I have as an expert is I'm an academic, as you say. So I have written two best-selling textbooks, one on purchasing and supply chain management, the other on operations management, and also multiple other books talking about the impact of COVID on supply chains and so forth. So I'm able to pull from my own textbooks to say, look, This is a well-known principle. It's taught to undergraduates and MBA students across the country. It's a standard principle. It's in my textbook, and so I can point to that very often as a standard practice because it is something that is common knowledge as defined by a textbook.
So, how do you maintain objectivity when the stakes are so high, and like especially when you're working on these big ticket litigations where like the amount at stake is really high. The companies are like high profile companies known world over, and and people are relying on your expertise. So, I mean, any tips, anything you can talk about that helps you remain objective and focus on the science and the facts, and not on which party has retained you and the persuasiveness that puts on your testimony.
No, that's an excellent question, Ashish. And I think as an expert, the only asset that you bring is your credibility and your integrity. And so from the outset, I have to look at a case and say, do I agree with the hypothesis or the question that they are asking me to answer? And if I look at the question or the hypothesis that they're offering the court, and I say I can't buy into this, this doesn't make sense to me. This doesn't appeal to my sense of what's right and wrong and what is considered standard industry practice. And I will decline to take on a case if I don't believe in that case. So I think that's important up front as an expert, that you establish a position that you feel comfortable with, that you can testify in front of a jury. Think of it as a front page news. If you said this on the front page of the New York Times, would you feel comfortable with that? Right. So those are the things I think that are really important to consider as you go into a case, even before you get retained.
And the other balancing act that experts are usually asked to do is to create a balance between the technical accuracy of their testimony and presenting these complex ideas and concepts to a non-technical jury, which is comprised of common men and women. So, do you have any methods, any tips, anything that you employ to explain these complex concepts in simple terms to the jury while maintaining the technical accuracy?
Well, I think it is important to use analytics and other technical analyses in many of the cases I'm involved in. And the best way to do that, of course, is through visual displays, charts, graphs, and usually those can take a lot of data and summarize it and show it in a picture that the jury can clearly observe for themselves and make their own decision. And the other thing is the source of information. It's easy to pull data from somewhere and say, oh, this is what it showed. I also rely on third-party objective data. And one of the sources that I use is government data, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Census of U.S. manufacturers, other kinds of market research initiatives like IQ. So there's a number of other sources that I can pull from. Ibis World is another that I can pull on to say, look, it's not just me telling you. This is a third-party objective party that's providing this data, and there's no other more objective party than the government, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, for instance. And so I can create a graph and show them, here's what it also shows in terms of the government data. And that's also very persuasive to a jury that, I'm not making this stuff up. The data clearly shows that this is the case.
And when you're explaining things to the jury, cross-examination also comes as a part of the whole process. And that can be a little tricky. Opposing counsels, like you said, they can be a little difficult. So how do you handle like a tough question or attempts to discredit your testimony in front of the jury? And how important of a role does your demeanor play in a situation like that?
Well, again, that's a great question. I think it's important to remain calm in the
Mhm.
face of cross-examination. The other thing that can happen is it's important during a deposition, and a deposition is a set of queries and questions that the other party will ask you regarding your report. And they'll try to get sound bites out of you in the deposition that they can replay in court. Oh, look, he says this, but in deposition he said that. So they're trying to disqualify you and make you look like a liar, essentially.
Mhm.
And so it's important to, during a deposition, to be very careful with your words. Stick to your report. Don't go outside of your lane. And I think that's another important piece of advice is as an expert witness, it's important to get the questions up front that you are asked to opine on and stick to those questions. Stick to your lane. Don't go outside of that lane. Don't go try to make declarations on legal opinion or legal interpretations of contracts or disputes. You're not a lawyer. I'm a supply chain expert. I'm not a lawyer. And it's important to stick to your knitting and be able to stick to the topics. And if you do that, it's really difficult for, under cross-examination for someone to trick you. And they'll try to do that. They will try to get you to step outside your lane. And in response, it's always important to say, I didn't opine on that question, or I was not asked to opine on that question. So don't try to offer something that isn't relevant or directly addressed by your own expert witness report.
So do you have any stories or any anecdotes on like a lesson that you probably learned the hard way while acting as an expert witness, or maybe something you learned from somebody else's mistake?
Well, I think there was one case where, in the Lynn case, I made a comment to the effect of, well, the WMS that they used was not a recognized software system by Gardner. And Gardner does what they call their magic quadrant analysis of
Mm-hmm.
major software systems. And so I said, well, it wasn't included in the Gardner report, and therefore it's not really a well-recognized system. The argument came back that, well, yeah, it was using what's called the Infor system as the platform, and then they wrote their software on top of that. Infor was in the Gardner Magic Quadrant, so therefore my testimony was struck from that particular aspect. So, there's those kinds of, details that opposing counsel will try to exclude you based on. But the judge in this case, wisely said, yeah, we'll strike that part of his testimony, but we don't have to strike his entire testimony based on that mistake.
Yeah. So, given how much the global supply chain landscape has evolved, and we had the couple of disruptions, like obviously the pandemic was the biggest disruption to the global supply chain that we've seen in a long time. Like shipping containers, like there was a shortage of shipping containers from China and from other supplying countries. So, have you seen new areas of focus or disputes that have emerged in your recent work as an expert witness or in the industry as general?
Well, I should say up front that, prior to the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
I had never been in the media or rarely was in the media.
Mm-hmm.
Since the pandemic, I've been sought out by the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, NPR. Uh, I've been on CBS, the Today Show. I mean, it's crazy because everyone's talking about supply chains. I was fortunate; I had a front row seat to the pandemic. I served on the Joint Acquisition Task Force, stood up by the White House that was focused on trying to address many of the shortages that occurred during the pandemic, especially for PPE and certain kinds of drugs and ventilators and so forth. Subsequent to that, I testified to the Senate, the U.S. Senate Committee on Homeland Security, on the need for developing domestic drugs to address the
Mm-hmm.
shortages that we experience. And I've also served as a consultant to the Council of Economic Advisors to the White House, and we're currently working on a project focused on drug shortages. So yes, the shortages in supply chains continue to go on, and we're seeing today disruptions occurring due to the Houthi rebels in the Red Sea. That's disrupting the Suez Canal. Water shortages in the Panama Canal, and even here in North Carolina, Hurricane Helene destroyed a Becton Dickinson plant that produces 70% of the IV fluids for hospitals in this country. So these disruptions are occurring all the time. In fact, I would say that they're occurring every other day somewhere in the world. And that's due to geopolitical issues, weather events, adverse weather, flooding, tornadoes, supplier fires. So there's all kinds of things that are constantly disrupting supply chains. And as a result, it really becomes critical that you can't blame other these factors. You can't say, well, we're going to blame it all on COVID. That doesn't work anymore. Companies need to be prepared for any kinds of disruptions that occur. Most are not, but that continues to be the challenge.
So, and you told me a little while earlier that because you've written books on supply chain management, and that helps you when you're giving your opinion as an expert witness, you're able to tap into that work. So let's flip that and ask you how does the expert witness work impact your stature? Like, does it uplift your stature in the academic community? Do you feel that the academic community engages with your work differently because of your expert witness experience, or probably it's not made any difference at all? Like, what's your take on that?
I don't think it really makes a big impact on the academic community. The academic community is still largely, you're only as good as what you've published lately, right? So, they look at things like citation counts, or, are you publishing peer-reviewed articles? And even books don't matter that much to the academic community. But I do the expert witness work, again, going back to what I said earlier, I really enjoy learning. And I enjoy always understanding these legal arguments and what is happening and what does the law say about that. The drug shortages work. I was at the White House last week. That continues to be a challenge. So these kinds of issues are ones that, at my stage of my career, I want to continue to learn about. And the expert witness work really gives me an opportunity to continue to learn. And that's why I do it. I really enjoy it.
And the last few years, like especially last year, the biggest buzzword has been AI. So what impact have you seen AI having on supply chain management, and like the technical aspects, and like, have you seen any legal aspects coming up?
I haven't seen any legal aspects coming up, but I am certain that there will be. AI is taking the business community and the supply chain community by storm right now. There are AI firms popping up everywhere, and we've interviewed several of them, in my MBA class, and they come in and talk about what they're doing. I think someone said this to me the other day, and I like this comment. AI is never going to replace humans, but you will be replaced by humans who use AI. Yeah. So AI makes people much more efficient. They're able to get a lot more done. They're able to pull on a much larger set of data to reach their decisions, and they're doing it based on data, not on gut feel or opinion. So I think it definitely will be something that is taking the community by storm. We're still very, very early in this renaissance, but I have no doubt it's going to continue to grow, and I'm sure there will be legal issues that come about as to, did the machine make the decision or did the person make the decision, right? And can you sue a machine, for instance? Can you sue a system? So there's some interesting issues, I think, that will start to come up.
Yeah, we are already seeing like a lot of those issues in, especially in copyright and patent cases. Like there's this one particular
Mhm.
company that's trying to use AI to generate art and generate ideas, and then trying to, like get a copyright or a patent on it. So yeah, I mean, it's very exciting. Legal is again one field that's heavily impacted. So what's your advice to other people in supply chain management who may want to do expert witness work? Like what kind of skills, maybe it's related to AI or other soft skills or marketing skills? What are the few, three, four different things that people can do if they want to like start in expert witness work, or maybe want to stay relevant?
So I think, if you're interested in this work, I mean,
Hmm.
I think a lot of academics kind of say, oh, if I do this, I'll just be a paid gun for hire. I've heard that term before. And that's not at all the case. As I said earlier, it's about, leveraging your expertise to be able to make an opinion and answer questions regarding a specific legal case. So it really is about using your expertise and your knowledge in a productive fashion. I would say if you're interested in it, you should definitely get in touch with one of the many agencies out there that represent expert witnesses. You can find them on the web. You should maybe start reading a few cases and looking at other expert witness reports. Many of them are can be found on the internet, and becoming familiar with what's involved and the kinds of work you can do. It's very well paid for the most part, and it's a different kind of publication. It's a different kind of work, and it is work that is impactful, which I think to me is also meaningful. It's doing
Hmm.
impactful work, and sometimes just publishing another article in a journal that a handful of people are going to read isn't as impactful as writing a really solid expert witness report that will determine the outcome of a major case.
And what advice do you have for attorneys who are, like probably they have a case involving supply chain management and they don't know that these are the kinds of experts I need to help to help me with this case? Like, do you have any advice for them? Like, how should they approach a case involving supply chain issues, and what time, at what point they should bring in an expert? What kind of experts? Like, how should they determine that, okay, these are the different kinds of experts that I may need in a case involving supply chain management?
Well, I think it's important to define first, when you talk about supply chain management, there are many facets to supply
Yeah.
chain management. There's procurement, there's contracting, there's negotiation, there's transportation, there's warehouse management, there's distribution. And those supply chains also vary significantly by industry, whether you're talking about consumer goods, pharmaceuticals, oil and gas, electronics. So, each of these industries has very different supply chain characteristics. So
Hmm.
I would say it's important to find an expert who has both industry and supply chain business process knowledge. And also, I think it's important to define the questions that you're looking for them to answer carefully. Pick those questions carefully, and again, think about someone who can help you educate a jury and help to define the case in terms that a jury or a judge in this case or a arbitration panel would understand.
And any advice you have for attorneys, again, to help you work better with them? Like, again, based on the experience that you've had till now, like what are the one of the two things that you wish they would have done better?
Well, I can't think of any that have I haven't really enjoyed working with. I will say that I think writing the expert report is a
Hmm.
collaborative process. It's important that I feel like I've written the majority of the report. That's my preference.
Right.
I do like to have counsel help me with the edits, and also if they can direct me to the right evidence as well, making sure that they bring the right evidence to my attention. Those things I think are very helpful in crafting and developing a good expert report. Defining good questions, bringing the right evidence, and then collaborating on the writing of that report.
Mhm. And other than, again, like opining on the issues in the case, like has an attorney asked your help, or have you helped an attorney in preparing questions for cross-examining the opposing expert? And is that something that attorneys should use experts to do?
Absolutely, yeah. And I've been involved in writing short briefs
Mhm.
on a particular issue to help educate the attorneys prior to a deposition or prior to a court case, to make sure that they are, hitting on the right points that could be important evidence to use in my report and in my deposition. So, yeah, it is absolutely, and I've also been hired early on in a case as a consultant to even help them understand and frame the issue in terms that they can understand. So, yeah, there's many other aspects of a expert witness that can really help the attorney do a better job on preparing their case.
All right. And probably like an advice that you think, like you wish you had when you were starting as an expert witness, if you had to like go back and give your old self an advice.
I think I would say, be sure to, get the question right up front, right? Just make sure you understand exactly what you're being asked to opine on and stick to those questions. Sometimes I write things, I go off on a tangent and I write on things that, maybe either have no bearing to the lawyer's case or, which, I'm opining on something that I have no business opining on. So I've made that mistake a few times, and they've had to go back and edit out stuff that I've written. So I think it's important to, be careful in defining the questions you're asked to opine on, and don't stray out of your lane.
That's excellent advice. And so, Dr. Handfield, if like a listener who may be in the supply chain domain, or an attorney who's looking for expert assistance, what's the best way to find you and get in touch with you?
Yes, you can get in touch with me through, directly, either through my email, which is online. I'm a professor at North Carolina State University. Or if you're working with a expert witness testimony representative, and again, I'm not going to mention all of the ones that are out there, but I work with several. That would be another vehicle to be able to engage me, or or if you're interested in becoming one, to engage with them.
Great. So thank you so much for your time and like sharing your experience with us. It was excellent having you here, and we look forward to seeing how your work continues to shape the future of supply chain management and legal disputes.
Thank you, Ashish. It's really been a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much
Yes,
for inviting me.
Thank you. So that was Dr. Robert Handfield, supply chain management expert witness. We'll return next week with a new guest and try to learn about a new area of expertise. If you found this discussion useful, please consider subscribing to the podcast so you don't miss new episodes. And do give us a review. This really helps other users discover the podcast. If you'd like to be a guest on our show, please write to media@xlightum.com. See you in the next episode.